Backrooms, dinettes. Oh yeah, you can find them at the market. We talking about flea market. Montgomery, it's just like a mini mall. Oh yeah, come shop with us. I said flea market. It's just like a mini mall. Hey, hey.
Yeah, it's confession time. I am late as shit. This video was supposed to be out over a month and a half ago, and it got so delayed I was gonna outright cancel it. But to my surprise, friends and family still keep asking about it, and considering that these are now on streaming, the discussion around these movies has had a resurgence. So I'm gonna talk about them because I feel like it. It's time for
Back Sessions.
Now, before I dive into the nitty-gritty of these films, let's first focus on the real stars of the show. The two young directors that I'm definitely not jealous of. Cory Barker and Kane Parsons. I don't think there's a single article that doesn't mention their youth, especially Kane Parsons, who was hired on as A24's youngest director at just 19 years old. Some people are actually going as far as to say that Kane Parsons didn't actually direct the Backrooms, and that instead it was a ghost director and that it's all done for publicity, claiming that someone that young couldn't be that competent in directing a movie. Damn, that's quite the compliment for Kane. I find this claim incredibly dumb. Throughout cinema history, there have been plenty of great directors who started in their early 20s. And hey, don't get me wrong, it's still a great accomplishment, and I would definitely be proud if I was him. But it isn't an entirely unique phenomenon. And to piggyback off of this sentiment, the second major headline you're going to see surrounding these two is the fact that they come from YouTube. This same buzz also surrounded the likes of the Filippo brothers, who directed Talk to Me and Bring Her Back. Mainstream media wants to categorize these guys as these outliers, YouTubers making it into the mainstream Hollywood scene. But what the media fails to recognize is that YouTube is the mainstream. It's not just some hip new trend. If you're someone in my age demographic or younger, you grew up with YouTube and it's your outlet. It's your gateway into this world. Kids aren't really going to film school and shooting shit on 16mm anymore. It's expensive and a pain in the ass. Instead, they're starting TikTok and YouTube channels in their own bedroom. So it's a pretty safe bet to say that any filmmakers under the age of 35 are going to be born out of YouTube. And YouTube is going to launch the careers of pretty much every director going forward. Not that it won't happen the old-fashioned way at all, I'm just saying that there's a proof of concept here, and a lot of people aren't reading the writing on the wall. To me, what's more inspiring than Kane Parsons landing a directorial gig with A24 at just 20 years old is the fact that he started creating the Backrooms lore when he was only 16. His series of short films are fascinating. They have beautiful photorealistic CG that he did in Blender, and he perfectly captures that surreal, dream world feeling you get when you look at liminal spaces. He was seamlessly able to blend live action footage with 3D CGI, and it's no wonder that executives had their eyes on him. Again, it's silly to think that anyone is having a hard time believing he directed a feature-length film when he already had so many amazing videos on his belt. I mean, for God's sakes, he made 23 shorts ranging from 34 seconds to 45 minutes. When you add up the entire continuity, it's already reaching feature-length territory. This kid even did a whole lot of his own score. Not to get ahead of myself, but there's so many memorable tracks in this movie. As for Cory Barker, he joins the club of the Filippo brothers, Zach Cregger, and Jordan Peele, proving that the link between comedy and horror is a lot closer than some people give it credit. Not only are both genres very cheap to make, but there's also somewhat of a similar creative mechanic between building up to a punchline of a joke and building up to a jump scare, getting that perfect balance of tension and relief. But something I have to give Barker a lot of credit for is the fact that there is no relief at the end of his movie. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. These two guys have proven that not only is the theater experience not dead, but modern audiences don't always want remakes and sequels. We want to see original stories from new voices, and we can only hope that this is the start to a very long and successful career for both Curry Barker and Kane Parsons, and that this movement of YouTube turned directors ushers in a new age of independent cinema. With that out of the way, full spoilers ahead. I mean, who am I kidding? Most people have already seen both of these. If you haven't seen them already, what are you doing? Stop listening to me yap and go watch them. Alright, so why is everyone obsessed with Obsession? Where do I even begin? The riveting performances, the gorgeous lighting, a haunting score that hasn't given me goosebumps like that since It Follows. There's a lot to love here, but the one great unifier amongst all the fans is definitely Andy Navarrete. She had already had quite a few roles before this, but Obsession has skyrocketed her into the stars. To say it's well deserved is an understatement. Watching her snap between an imprisoned soul and this twisted, unnatural facade is like watching someone perform a magic trick. With a less talented actress, the character of Nikki Freeman could have been way too cheesy and not believable at all. But even when she's smiling with a sparkle in her eye, that pain and dread is always there underneath. Oscar noms have been up in conversations, and I think it's well deserved. But as much as I love Indy, she didn't carry the movie all on her own. Her performance sticks with you the most because it's so intense, but there's not a single weak link here. I think everyone was perfect in their role. Nikki Freeman is easily the most demanding role to play, but Bear also requires quite a bit of balance to get right. Michael Johnston perfectly captures that quote-unquote nice guy, docile persona, and paired with Curry Barker's writing, he was able to trick the audience in that opening scene into actually being empathetic for him, only to slowly drag Nikki and the audience into his deep, dark selfishness. Curry Barker has joked that them having zero chemistry in the screen test is why they work so perfect as this fake couple, and I don't think Nikki's tortured obsession would have worked nearly as well without Bear's sniveling cowardice. I also gotta mention Curry Barker's friend and his co-creative of the That's a Bad Idea channel, Cooper Tomlinson. He's able to play a terrible friend, but without being a cartoony douchebag. Also, how'd you get my boy Andy Richter in here? He's only in it for like a minute, but I loved every second of it. And last but not least, we also have Megan Lawless as Sarah Harper. While her particular role may not have the same range as the other characters, there's still just enough moral complexity to her that lets her contribute to the absolute mess that is this fucked up friend group. A truly great horror film should horrify you, not just scare you. And what makes this horror movie so horrifying is the emotional gut punch that is Bear's twisted morality. And he's walking proof that being good and being nice are two very different things.
Did you guys notice that Bear is actually the real villain?
Yeah, I know it's been memed and talked about to death, but the depths of his awfulness are painfully real. This might be a controversial take, but please, bear with me.
This guy's sick!
No, but seriously, just hear me out. I've seen a lot of people refer to Bear as an incel, which isn't really an accurate description. He's more of a classic hopeless romantic and self-proclaimed nice guy with misogynistic entitlement, driven by an insecure ego and a bit of narcissism, which makes them arguably more dangerous, because an incel is a lot easier to spot on the surface. The nice guy's not. He isn't some complete antisocial, awkward shut-in who couldn't pull any girls. He has friends, he has a social life, he's conventionally attractive, and there's 2 women in his life who are actually comfortable around him. If this was a late 90s, early 2000s rom-com chick flick, he would be the sensitive, adorable protagonist who gets the popular girl in the end. But the harsh reality is, underneath, there's a very spiteful, deeply insecure, emotionally immature, attention-starved child. And Nikki is basically just his pixie dream girl. She's cute, confident, introspective, genuinely kind, but most importantly, has her own ambitions and actually has a personality. What makes her so attractive to Bear is also what intimidates him, which fuels his obsessive desire to possess her. I saw someone on Instagram Reels claim that Bear is more evil than the Joker, and the response to her thesis in the comments was predictably very ugly. But pulling back and looking at it in the abstract, I totally understand the sentiment of what she was trying to say. I think a more accurate thesis would be that Bear is scarier than the Joker because he's more relatable. And that's something I don't think a lot of people want to admit. Because how could someone be empathetic towards someone who literally strips someone of their bodily autonomy and for all intents and purposes basically roofied someone? But that's what makes the story so compelling. It forces you to engage with a very disturbing psychology behind a very mundane and quiet form of evil. Not the normal super psychotic kind of evil you see with things like Michael Myers in Halloween, or even the Joker, psychos who kill people for the love of the game. No, this is a form of abuse that hits a lot closer to home that so many people in bad relationships have experienced. A portrait of destructive cowardice. That opening monologue of Bear practicing his speech with the waitress is very relatable. You can tell that he means the things he's saying, or at the very least he thinks he does. Who hasn't been absolutely head over heels in love? Everybody wants someone to want them. It's completely natural to be nervous and fumble over yourself around someone that you admire. But the problem lies in the fact that he doesn't actually know what love is. His entire concept of love is entirely based around desire. A romantic partner to him is just someone who's supposed to make you happy. Someone to complete him because he's empty, as opposed to someone who you're actually sharing your life with. But if you don't love yourself or have anything else to live for, then you are putting it entirely on someone else to lift up your ego. And to a certain extent, you gotta feel sorry for him.
Or at least before it gets to the bed scene, or the car scene, or the other bed scene, or the other car scene.
God, fuck this guy. We're never told what happened to his parents, but we do know that he lived with his grandmother and that she died and left behind a creepy old house. That has potential to be kind of cute in a hipstery way, but the neglected cat smell really doesn't help. Michael Johnson had more to say about the psychology of Bear.
I thought a lot about what Bear's attachment style was, and it was very clear that it was avoidant. Bear doesn't deal with anything that makes him uncomfortable. I spent a little bit of time thinking about how his relationship with his parents must have been, and there's no mention of them in the film, and we know that his grandmother has passed away. We don't know when. We know he inherited this home. I just imagine that Bear was a kid who just no one paid attention to him really growing up. He was just kind of left to his own devices, literally. Everything that he's learned is from Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. His idea of like what it means to be a man, how to be cool, and how to get people to like him. He's a product of that internet doom scrolling, I think.
I think that being empathetic towards a character like Bear is actually the key to recognizing these toxic behaviors in people and stopping it before it goes too far. Realistically speaking, if it weren't for the one-wish Willow, Bear wasn't beyond saving. I truly believe that with the right friends, the right community, some therapy, and some healthy emotional growing pains, Bear could have developed into a more well-rounded person who wasn't codependently thirsting for validation. He thinks he's in love with Nikki, but he's not. He's only in love with the idea of her. He didn't care that she was unhappy at their job. He was just upset that he wasn't going to be able to keep tabs on her once she was gone. He saw her as the world delivering him his own personal angel. He had no ambitions or anything going on for himself. He was just looking for a hot girl to fill the void in his heart, presumably left by his parents and grandmother. But that's a really unfair thing to just thrust onto somebody. And the biggest red flag is when Nikki talks about how she wants to write a love story and he says, ooh, a romance. And she says, no, not a romance, a love story. And he says, what's the difference? Romance is performative, it's surface level. In order to love, you gotta be willing to sacrifice, to compromise, to be willing to put someone before yourself. One of the most frustrating things about this whole situation is the fact that Nikki actually gave him an opportunity to admit his feelings. And we all know it's difficult to admit your feelings, but dude!
Oh, we were right there, man!
You don't get a more golden opportunity than that. But he is so avoidant, so unwilling to make himself uncomfortable. He can't even respect her as one adult to another and get over himself. And to add insult to injury, his dumbass friend told him to playfully bully her instead of just respecting her and being straightforward and honest. You should have let the waitress talk. And Ian's not innocent in this either, but we'll get to him in a minute. There's a lot of debate whether or not Nikki would have actually given Bear a chance. And at the beginning of the movie, in the bar and in the car ride, there's a lot of mixed signals. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that she saw him as a brother.
Get your girl home safe.
Ew, don't say it like that. See you later, Bear. All right, Bear.
I got you something.
What?
You'll see.
Ew, no,
Why does that make me nervous?
Nikki said she just thought you,
her little brother. Or, and she, friend-zoned you.
But there's also just enough lines and just enough hints to keep it ambiguous.
I got it.
Okay, fine. Yes, you can.
I said I got it.
You gotta be quicker than that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wait, Ian, let's do a duet.
Fuck that.
Let's go musicals.
You know, you're the only person that I get to really talk to about this stuff, especially at work. You're not a complete brick wall.
When I have a crush on a guy, no one knows.
I think we're good friends.
Okay. Good. Good night.
And for what it's worth, both Curry Barker and Indy Navarrete both said that she probably would have given him a chance. So if they did go out, it probably would eventually crash and burn because he's too emotionally immature. But by robbing himself of that experience, by taking away that opportunity to actually be in a genuine relationship with someone that he believed he was in love with, he missed a chance to grow and learn as a person and gain important life experience that most young people have to go through in their life. It still would have been shitty for Nikki, but it wouldn't have been a fucking horror movie. And she's definitely tough enough that she wouldn't let someone like Bear walk all over her. The point is, you gotta put in the effort and be vulnerable. But as we know, they all fell victim to the One Wish Willow. The interesting thing about the One Wish Willow is that Curry Barker stated himself that it isn't inherently cursed. There are plenty of people who made a wish and got everything they ever wanted. The problem is, Bear's wish was inherently fucked, no matter how carefully he worded it or tried to spin it. Robbing someone of choice and consent is evil. Curry Barker also made it a point to say that Nikki is not possessed by some demon or some entity, but rather a part of her brain is rewired in order to fulfill Bear's wish, while the real, genuine Nikki is trapped underneath, watching it through her own eyes. Just like the sunken place in Get Out, becoming a passenger in her own body, forced to suffer the consequences of its selfishness. There's also some evidence to suggest that she's able to temporarily break out of it whenever she sees her own reflection. These moments where she temporarily snaps out are just so heartbreaking. That's what really fuels that horror. You go from rooting for the awkward dorky guy to absolutely despising that pathetic piece of shit. No one can really blame him for making the wish that he did, because no one in their right mind would actually think that works. It was just some dumb, ignorant wish that he made in a moment of frustration with himself. And once things start to heat up, he very desperately wants to confirm that this is consensual and that this is real. But after some investigating, he finds out it isn't. But he would rather live in a fantasy than come to terms with the things that he's done. A normal, healthy person would have had a sense of urgency after realizing something was profoundly wrong. If it seems too good to be true, then it probably is. After that awkward, psychotic dinner scene, your boy Bear should have called it quits. There's a moment on the phone when he's talking to Ian, and you can tell he's putting together that the wish worked. Nikki was lying to Bear to get his sympathy because that's something Bear would do. Again, what love means to him versus what love actually is are two very different things. The love that she has for him is a reflection of his obsessive, limerence idea of what love is. It's like this altered Nikki is this fucked up computer trying to make every little calculated move to love him in the same fucked up way that he thinks he loves her. But if a girl that you claim to care about and love has a psychotic breakdown in the middle of a restaurant and has been consistently lying to you about the health of their father in order to make you more sympathetic over them, oh yeah, and also feeds you your dead cat, this is more than enough evidence than you need to know that something's really wrong and you need to stop. But no, of course, Bear is a coward, and we get this disturbing hard cut to Bear on top of Nikki in the bed. Nikki's lifeless face just sitting there moaning is such a haunting image and one of the most painful scenes to watch in the whole movie. Most people I've talked to say that the moment they turned on Bear was the moment that he turned away from Nikki when she begged to be killed. On my first watch, it was the moment that he called and asked to change his wish instead of outright canceling it. He didn't want to lose what he obtained. He just wanted it to stop inconveniencing him. And then there's that blood-curdling moment where you hear the real Nikki screaming on the phone.
Do you want to speak to her?
This is the first time I felt absolute rage and hatred for Bear, but going back and watching it a second and third time, it's now become the scene once they get back from the restaurant. Plausible deniability is going out the window by this point. He's choosing to be willfully ignorant, trying to convince himself that this is just some weird coincidence, some bad dream. But I think deep down he knew, and instead of confronting the consequences of what he did, he pleasured himself at the expense of someone else. Again, no one's blaming him for making the wish initially, but time and time again, he had a chance to possibly make things right. It didn't have to escalate to the point of literally killing everyone in his life. But I think now's a good time to talk about Ian and Sarah. Ian may not be a rapist like Bear, but he's definitely still a shitty guy. Similar to Bear, he was too scared to face discomfort and couldn't just be open and honest and tell him that he had been with Nikki. Nikki's sex life was her business. There was no reason for her to disclose any of that was going down. She didn't know that Bear liked her, and she might have had some reservations and conflict about hooking up with Ian anyways. But in Ian's case, he knew that his best friend was in love with her, but he chose to go behind Bear's back anyways. And as far as I'm concerned, he was certainly trying to sabotage Bear's chances. And in the case of Sarah, she was a sweetheart, don't get me wrong. I don't have any doubt that she genuinely cared about Bear, and he would have been so lucky to have her in his life like that. But she also was complicit in hiding things from Bear. She eventually let him know what's up. But it was only after she watched her close friend stab herself in the face. You would think that her main concern and priority would be checking in on Nikki, but instead she preemptively sides with Bear and assumes that he's being taken advantage of because she's head over heels for him. I don't know about you, but if I saw my friends stab themselves in the face and clearly going through a mental breakdown, I wouldn't ask their boyfriend or girlfriend to come meet me discreetly and then confess my feelings to them. I'm not saying that she was as bad as Bear, not even close, but she wasn't entirely innocent and was a bit selfish. And she definitely didn't deserve to get her fucking face smashed in. Good lord. Damn it, Bear, you're a whiny little bitch and you piss me off.
So let me get this straight. Dumbass! You have a fully reloaded shotgun, but you chose to use a 1-bullet pistol. You are not James Bond. Shut the fuck up.
You fumbled not one, but 2 baddies. God! You know what? Let's examine this just a little bit further, because it's not that far-fetched to say that Sarah and Nikki are both equally as gorgeous. I know everyone has their preferences and yada yada yada, but they're both very pretty girls. They like going to trivia night, and they both seem to have a decent degree of emotional intelligence. I mean, Sarah was all over him, but what it really comes down to is the psychology of if you hate yourself, then if anyone likes you, you probably think there's something wrong with them. He wanted Nikki because he believed she didn't want him, and because she was hard to get, that made the thrill and the obsession that much stronger. She was the hot, cool girl in his mind, and he put her up on a pedestal, and by winning her affection, he gets his validation. Meanwhile, there's someone that genuinely likes him right there in front of his face, consoling him over his dead cat that he fucking killed. But instead of taking the time to actually mourn his cat, he decides instead to just obsess over Nikki to get over it. Whatever, both these girls were too good for him anyways, and Sarah dodged a bullet.
God, I hate this motherfucker. I can't stand this.
Moral of the story is that all 4 of these kids should have just been way more honest with each other and none of this shit would have happened. Learn to take rejection like a man and get on with your life. Get a hobby. Do something with your life. Being nice doesn't mean you deserve some ass. The more you do with yourself, the more you have to offer as a person. And most importantly, the happier you'll be. Before I wrap it up on Obsession, there are a few more things I just want to mention real quick that I liked about the movie. The Uncanny Valley makeup that they used on Indy Navarrete when she was standing in that dark corner gave me nightmares. It's so simple, but so effective. And that scene has been memed to death, but it still gets me. Also, the way she steps out of the shadows, immediately I clocked it. It's inspired by Pulse. I just, by coincidence, happened to watch it for for the first time like a year and a half ago, and as soon as I saw that, I went, oh, that's from Pulse. I literally was like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme. I also think another really horrifying idea is the fact that the Wish Nikki is, you know, a construct that Bear projects. So when he's not around and she isn't being perceived, it's like she's void. She doesn't exist. So that scene where he closes the door and she's stuck, frozen on that smile, and she starts, you know, pissing and shitting herself. It's just so heartbreaking to watch. But again, such a crazy, horrific idea, and I think it was it worked. It scared, it freaked me out. I also have to say, thank God Curry Barker had the balls to make the ending as dark and bitter as it was. Apparently some Hollywood executives were offering him a bunch of money to change the story about Bear figuring out the One Wish Willow and reversing everything and saving her in the end, and making it a generic Hollywood hero story. But Curry stuck to his guns and kept it dark and told a uniquely disgusting, mean-spirited cautionary tale, ending with Bear taking the pills and committing suicide, not to free Nikki, but to free himself, because he had no other way out. And even then, he was still too cowardly to go through with it, which actually was an improvised moment from Michael Johnson, which was a brilliant move on his part. Bear does eventually die just like his cat, but unfortunately Nikki wasn't truly free because she was left to deal with the consequences of his actions. It makes the message of the movie hit so much harder. We finally get a horror movie that's actually horrific. And my favorite shot in the whole movie is when Nikki is standing at Bear's doorway waiting to be let in, and you just see those glistening, lifeless eyes in the darkness. It reminds me a lot of the reflective eyes in Blade Runner, and it's just such a beautiful effect. And now it's time to give this movie a rating. I can't really find anything wrong with it or anything I don't like. It is a very heavy movie to watch. It's not something I really like to rewatch a bunch, just because it is so dark and so grim and just makes you feel like shit. But I think this movie is an instant classic. And I have this problem, unfortunately, with this channel with only reviewing things that I really, really like. So I end up throwing out a lot of high scores, and I feel like it kind of dilutes my rating process. So I'm trying to be more disciplined when giving things a rating, but I mean, this is as close to a 10 as you can possibly be, but I'm gonna show a little restraint. I'm giving this a 9.5 out of 10. And you have to appreciate the absolute insanity that is this movie's box office. The budget for this movie was incredibly low. It was only $750,000. Didn't even break $1 million. As of this recording, the total worldwide box office is $490 million. That's almost 500% of the budget, making it the highest grossing film ever relative to its budget. Oh my God. Obsession didn't have to reinvent the wheel. It just had to take a very simple concept and execute it exceptionally well. It succeeded because it feels honest, it feels real, and it resonates with an audience in a way that so much big budget Hollywood slop could never. I have made my peace. I'm done obsessing over obsession. It's time to enter the Backrooms.
Hi, I'm Chiwetel Ejiofor.
And I'm director Kane Parsons.
Our new film, Backrooms, is now available to buy or rent on Fandango at home.
Go watch it today. I had a few beers.
Because someone won't get off their fat fucking ass and fuck me.
A lot of people compare these movies and like to say that one's better than the other, but I don't think there's really a fair comparison to be had here. Yes, there's definitely some parallels, but ultimately I think the movies offer very different things. To me, Obsession was a lot more straightforward, it was more of a gut punch, and thus ultimately was more emotionally compelling, while the Backrooms was slow, meditative, and in my opinion, more intellectually stimulating. Of course, not to say Obsession lacks complexity, but rather it's more straightforward, wears a lot of its themes on its sleeve, and is a lot more tightly paced, while Backrooms has a more cerebral, dreamlike quality that doesn't have the same wide mainstream commercial appeal as something like Obsession. It's insane to think about how the Backrooms as a modern mythology all started with one eerie photograph on 4chan that eventually blossomed into a theatrically released movie. I think the reason why the Backrooms appeals so greatly to the Gen Z and millennial demographic is because so many of us grew up with, Blockbuster, Toys R Us, retro shopping malls that slowly decayed and became dilapidated ruins and shadows of their former selves. Watching your warm, nostalgic third spaces transform into these eerie, liminal ghost towns that no longer really serve a purpose, they simply exist as a memory. We see the Backrooms everywhere we go. It goes far beyond Roblox and Gmod. And I think what's so great about Kane Parsons' shorts is they're not preoccupied with jump scares. It's all about the atmosphere. And he's perfectly able to capture that feeling of staring into a liminal space and feeling like it's staring back at you. It's a flavor of speculative science fiction horror that really lets your imagination run wild, capturing that feeling we've all had in our dreams of walking around our school, but it doesn't look quite right. And for as much as I love his shorts, they are not required viewing. I think the Backrooms movie is an experience worth having even without the tangential material. While the shorts are more straightforward science fiction horror, having a feature-length runtime allows him to build characters and create a psychological drama, to varying levels of success. Chiwetel Ejiofor gives an amazing performance as Clark. He was sympathetic, believably flawed, and his dangerous curiosity was very compelling. You really felt like you were walking around in this liminal space with him. Renate Reinsve as Dr. Mary Klein was also very good, but I don't think she was given quite as much to do. Her backstory is interesting, and the way it ties together at the end I think makes sense thematically, but I wish we got just a little bit more from her. Much like Bear, Clark is a deeply flawed person who's having trouble confronting who they are. In Clark's case, he's someone who's going to blame the world before he ever blames himself. It's this victim mentality that leads him to retreat into the depths of the Backrooms, and ultimately what leads to his demise. As you all know, the Backrooms is essentially just no clipping out of reality as if it were a video game. It's a space between space, where if you fall into it, you're stuck. And in the Kane Parsons version of this lore, it's a natural occurring phenomenon, just like earthquakes or tornadoes or supernovas or black holes. I always thought of the Backrooms as like an interdimensional tumorous growth, but instead of cells mindlessly replicating themselves into a mass, it's reality itself, attempting to replicate and remember itself. It doesn't want anything. It's not moral. It's indiscriminate. It's an automated process. Poor souls like Clark or Dr. Mary, wandering in and learning things about themselves and embracing their trauma, is simply a byproduct. Kind of like James entering Silent Hill. It's not that Silent Hill is trying to teach him a lesson. It's that it's an inherently demonic town that he brought his own shit into and he projected onto it. In some ways, the Backrooms almost feels like a physical manifestation of dementia. It's also not a coincidence that Async, the company that discovered the Backrooms, makes MRI machines, a device that allows you to see a person in layers, similar to how the Backrooms presents a distorted reality in layers. I also think it's appropriate that Kane Parsons set his Backrooms series in the 90s, because it captures that era when anxieties of being stuck in a corporate office was rampant, with movies like The Matrix, Office Space, Fight Club, and Being John Malkovich. And when you boil it down, the story of the Backrooms film is about two different people dealing with being stuck in the past. Clark decides that he wants to stay the same. He doesn't want to change. He accepts the monster he is instead of growing and evolving. Dr. Mary, as a therapist, tries to help herself by helping other people. She very much is trying to deal with the trauma that she had with her mother. She carries the handprint from the concrete in her pocket with her into the Backrooms. And sure enough, in order to save herself, she has to smash it on the pirate Clark. Letting go of the past in the form of this rock quite literally sets her free. Thus, she doesn't suffer the same fate as Clark. I think a lot of people just wanted a straightforward movie with monsters and scares and thrills, but I always thought that the Backrooms' greatest appeal
was the quiet, still, hypnotic droning.
the eerie, uncanny sound of buzzing lights, and that feeling of being alone with your thoughts. You could have easily made a more straightforward horror movie version of this story, but in my opinion, the more cerebral, dream logic, abstract version that we got is more true to what the Backrooms makes you feel. I also really appreciate that there were no solid answers at the end. The guys at Async are just as confused and lost as our protagonist. There's a sense of hopelessness and mystery that we wouldn't have gotten if we just had a normal Hollywood movie where they're like, oh, we must defeat the Backrooms, we have to solve the calculations, and we have to destroy this device before the portal closes, and like that shit would have been dumb. I get that this movie isn't for everyone, but the amount of people who say that this movie has no plot is just annoying. It may not resonate with everyone, but I think the unknown is best filled with your imagination. I don't go into movies just waiting to be spoon-fed every single detail. And no matter what, you have to appreciate that they built over 30,000 square feet of practical backroom sets. It makes all the difference. Going down the creepy hallways and slowly turning every corner, all while under extremely bright, harsh fluorescent lights. Not since Midsummer have I been so terrified of a location that was so brightly lit. I loved it so much that I never wanted to leave. I felt like Clark, I just wanted to keep exploring. And this leads me to my main gripe about the movie. I love plenty of movies that are slower paced and atmosphere focused. Blade Runner is my favorite movie of all time, and I'm also a big fan of David Lynch, so I'm fine with movies having unconventional pacing. That being said, I think this movie does have a pacing issue and some dialogue issues. The reason why Obsession hits so hard is because it starts slow and then it crescendos and it gets more and more intense with each thing leading into the next until finally it peaks right at its finale with a very explosive emotional ending. Backrooms, on the other hand, starts really intense, with a heart-pounding found footage monster attack. We then pull away and spend some time with Clark and Dr. Barry, until eventually the anticipation is over and we finally follow Clark into the Backrooms, which is very exciting and intriguing. It slowly puts the pieces in place until it finally ramps up when he forces his employees to go down there with him, and we return to the creepy found footage perspective. Unfortunately, it's at this moment where I think the movie peaks. It's never quite able to recover and hit that same level of tension, because immediately after this, it pumps the brakes and really slows things down. We then follow Dr. Mary exploring the Backrooms, but at this point, we're retreading on territory we've already explored. Yes, I know it's her first time going into the Backrooms, but it plays out like molasses and feels redundant. Things do take a twist when we eventually make it to the infamous dinner scene, but unfortunately, it's a bit of a mixed bag. A scene that I like in concept and like in parts, and I think it's great that there's that full circle moment where we go back to the role-playing therapy session. All that is fine and good, but what's kind of annoying is we have all this exposition of Clark explaining the Backrooms to Dr. Mary, and it feels like it's really over-explaining things. I think the monologue about someone trying to remember a dog and draw it is more than enough, and they visually show the process of the Backrooms recreating things from the real world later in the movie, and I believe in the principle of show, don't tell. It's ironic because so many people complain that not enough is explained, while I feel the other way around. But by the end of the movie, I still came around and I loved it. Ultimately, I can breathe a sigh of relief and say that this is an excellent representation of what the Backrooms is, and a great movie in its own right. I think it's awesome that this is A24's highest grossing movie, because it shows that Gen Z is more than ready to step up to the plate. So let's go ahead and give this a rating. I loved so much about this movie, and I found myself thinking about it long after it was over. It left me wanting more, but in a good way. And even though I spent more of the discussion on Obsession, this movie occupies a much bigger space in my brain. But even with all of that high praise, I still think it's just a little bit messy. A beautiful one at that. So I'm gonna give the Backrooms a solid 8 out of 10. Kane Parsons was definitely the right man for the job, and he went above and beyond what a typical boring Hollywood studio would have done with this property. And I find myself so inspired by both of these young filmmakers. I feel feel lucky to have been able to see both of these in theaters, and I'm so excited to see what they cook up next. Of course, Hollywood is going to get the wrong idea and make a bunch of shitty-ass movies about internet horror stories and tone-deaf relationship thrillers about psychotic girlfriends. But as long as we keep getting new faces and new voices, we'll get some diamonds through the rough. If you got this far in the video, thank you so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe so I can see you in the next one. I'm tired of shit, so I'm going to bed. Good night.
Look at this. Best part. You though.
Oh,